All right, thank you for joining us today. My name is Michael Aldridge. Many of you may know me as Maldridge from the IRC channel Bridged into Discord. We're going to talk to you today about cosplaying as a telephone company.
I'm Joe Zatarski. Many of you know me from past years of the show, as well as IRC and Discord bridges from there as well.
So today we're going to tell you everything you need to know about how we cosplay as a telephone company and what it takes to pull this off. So let's start with the simple thing.
Yeah, step one is don't.
Yeah, this is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
So a lot of people ask us, how long does it take to do this? What is the process like? We will start planning for VCF Midwest 2026 next week. We started planning for this show the week after the last one. It takes a full year to put the planning cycle together to figure out what we want to do, how we want to do it, source missing parts, repair damaged equipment, anything we need to come up with, including buying out Menards of all of their remaining pavers. So there's just a long tail of things that we have to do to prepare this show and get everything ready to go out the door.
Yeah, there's always improvements to make between years as well.
So why should you listen to us anyway if we've just told you this is a terrible idea and it's all bad? Well, we've done this enough now to kind of figure out where the pitfalls are. There are other VCFs, some of which have telephony as well, but the show I work with, VCF Southwest, and of course VCF Midwest, have by far the largest telephone footprints. So at this point, we have kind of figured out what it takes to pull this off and how to make it sustainable. Because you can do almost any exhibit once. The trick is making it work year on year on year.
Yeah. So Shadytel Midwest and SneakyNet, which run at, of course, VCF Midwest and VCF Southwest, respectively. We do have some differences. So Shadytel Midwest, first of all, we don't have any particular historical focus. The intention is just to really provide any service that I have the expertise to provide. If somebody wants to do something, I'm going to try and do it within the best of my abilities. And I'm beginning to see the light on automation, but it's presently a lot of heavily manual work, spreadsheets, and putting information in the systems and configuring things kind of more manually. We are the exhibit that enables many others in terms of the telephone services, whereas the exhibit itself, at least historically, wasn't so interesting to look at, although I've brought on some others to improve that.
And SneakyNet is the incumbent local exchange, the counterpart to Shadytel at VCF Southwest. So I've taken the position of a historical focus for a slightly questionable ethics ISP set sometime in the late 1990s to the early 2000s. You can think an ISP that might be running commercials that are a little too pushy about you signing up for service today. Most of SneakyNet's focus is on network and data services. That's kind of where I got into computers, was the idea of action at a distance and packet data transfer. So that's where SneakyNet really has a lot of services and a lot of focus put into the exhibit. The biggest thing that I do that you never see is write software. There's a lot of custom software. We'll get into some of that later in this talk, but SneakyNet's loadout and footprint is driven almost entirely by automation. And we're talking about systems here that didn't come with this. Cisco does not provide an API to configure an integrated services router. They provide a telnet and a manual. And the manual is usually wrong. So there's a lot of guess and check. There's a lot of figuring out how it works. There's a lot of figuring out, what do I actually need it to do? And then similar to Shadytel, SneakyNet focuses a lot on customer enablement. We solutioneer items for customers. And the idea is that my exhibit isn't that interesting to look at. If you walk up to my tables at VCF Southwest, you'll see, actually not a lot, because all the equipment's in racks under the tables. But if the lights are blinking, then other people's exhibits get a lot cooler. They can connect to terminal services. They can talk across the show. They can dial to BBSs. So it's more, what I do is more of, let's make the show as a whole interesting to look at, though I'm sitting with a not super exciting to look at table in the back.
Yeah, that's what we have in common. That's the whole
Yeah.
point of our exhibits, is let other people do that without having to bring all the equipment to do it and have the expertise to pull it off.
Yeah. And without having to store all the equipment to do what we do.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit more about the basic planning. You know, this is, like I said, it's an 11 months of the year planning affair. And then in the month that is right before the show, we're usually on a daily conference call, or we're working out what is the status on various items. What are we still missing? Does anybody need to panic buy several thousand feet of cable? You know, have we got enough volunteers who not only are able to be here and help, but have some hazy idea of what's going on? You know, we do a lot of stuff, especially here at Midwest with the towers, that is not necessarily intrinsically hazardous, but if you're not paying attention, accidents can happen. So a lot of planning goes into this. We offer, on average, half a dozen unique services, kind of expand and shrink that catalog year to year based on what's going on. Or sometimes another exhibitor will reach out and say, hey, can you deliver this? I've got this cool widget. Can you make it work? And then one of the big things that we've kind of touched on that we're working on in our current cycles is making our exhibits more interesting to look at on their own. You know, at VCF Southwest, Joe and I were discussing, you know, people experience the telephone company in different ways. Some people walk up and say, ooh, phones. And that's perfectly fine. You know, that's a great way to play with it. Remember to take the phone off hook before trying to dial it. But that's a perfectly okay way to experience it. Some people also walk up and go, oh, wow, you've got a Patent Electronics Dialfire 2960. That's so cool. And that spectrum is difficult to plan around because we want to cater to everyone who shows up. The phone is one of the most approachable pieces of retro technology because it's the thing that's embedded into our daily lives.
Yeah, so of course, as we mentioned, we've got, you know, somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen billable services. We've got local exchange telephony, which is your basic analog lines, your digital phone lines, your lines for modems, that kind of thing. Just, you know, pretty normal service, the kind of stuff you're familiar with. We offer packet data over various mediums, DSL here at Midwest, AMPS network for your old cell phones, POCSAG paging network. So we've got a UHF transmitter for that. It's not a public service, but we do have a voicemail system. If you have not called the VCFMW guest book yet, you can call 2000 and leave, you know, a message for like a guest book type entry from any phone in the show. And of course, we have IP connectivity, partly for our own equipment, and as well as provide the service for packet data and DSL systems. And we do host various applications on our own equipment, IVRs and interactive and non-interactive recorded things and those sorts of things, as well as WAN connectivity. You want to touch on that one?
Yeah, let's talk about WAN connectivity a little bit.
IP connectivity, and you want to go into a little more detail?
Yeah, as you may be aware, this convention center is quite large, which you would expect them to have amazing internet that we could tap into and just use. They might have that amazing internet, but not at a price point we are prepared to pay for. So
Yeah.
if you look on our central tower in the dead center of the show floor, you'll find a number of antennas up there. 2 of those are high gain, very high throughput cellular antennas. We're pushing 5G ultra wideband to T-Mobile. We're pushing LTE 2x2 MU-MIMO to AT&T. We'd also like to give a huge shout out to the Museum of Batch Computing and the MCI, MoBatch Community Internet Division. They have a cell tower parked in the parking lot right now, built on the top of a box truck. We're tied into that as well. So we have many different links that we're sending show traffic out via, with the hopes that at least one of them hasn't crashed at a time. The IP connectivity is then, you know, distributed out on a surprisingly modern network. You know, sometimes this is a choose your battles thing. The telephony is all as it should be. The IP equipment is all brand new. That makes it a little bit easier to maintain. I work in technology as my day job, and so that allows me to pull some of those skills back in and make that just a no-brainer. It is entertaining though, because exhibitors know that we have stable fixed wireless, we have reliable connectivity, and so even last year we had a case of a young man from an SGI exhibit coming up and asking to order DSL during the show so that they could get access to our internet and download some files over it. This year we have provided a Wi-Fi network for exhibitor use just to make things a little bit easier. But we do still provide that primarily over the wireline portfolio.
Yeah, and then of course the last thing on the page here is billing services. So we have lots of billable services. Well, they need to be billed. So we have a service provider for billing. Novelty billing, of course. And non-billable services, there are none. They're all billable services.
Yeah, why would we waste time on non-billable services?
So the general network design of the actual physical side at Shadytel Midwest is obviously we have the central office, which is at my tables and pretty much the middle of the whole place. That is then distributed out over the 25 pair feeder cables strung up on the telephone poles you probably noticed around the hall, and that then drops down at various poles to the ground where it's broken out to cross-connected to 4-pair cables, and then those individual 4-pair cables run past the exhibitor tables and can be tapped out for the individual pairs that every exhibitor needs. So this is kind of a hierarchical design of an MDF at the top, IDFs, those are distribution frames, so places where we can cross-connect different pairs, and then the actual subscriber NID, which is the Shady Rate interface that we'll touch on a little more later as well. Is kind of the point where your lines are actually delivered to. So this is all copper infrastructure at this time. Obviously we're doing the aerial cable. There's just one wire center, which we'll talk about more on the next, a little later, I think. And this is all done with copper specifically because I want to be able to offer weird services to basically everywhere in the place. So you can offer POTS service by different means than just copper, straight copper all the way there. But some of the weirder services like ISDN BRI or some of the analog trunk lines, you need a metallic loop to offer that. You can't use a carrier signal like T1.
So down in Texas with Southwest, SneakyNet Telecommunications uses a slightly different approach to the way our physical infrastructure is built out. I actually have 2 wire centers to deal with. So what is a wire center? Well, a wire center is just a geographic catchment area that all of the wires in that area go back to one point. In Texas with VCF Southwest, historically, we've actually had 2 buildings that we have 2 different exhibit halls in. So we have a T1 crossing the street. Last year we actually had 2 T1s crossing the street because we had a customer over there who wanted one. And everything homes back to 1 or more channel banks in each wire center. This is a lot more digital aggregation closer out to the customer because that allows me to basically own less cable. We can bring it in on bundles and break it out once we get there. The one kind of unique thing that we've started doing with Southwest's network is that as services grow, I have to choose what wire center they're offered in because duping the entire central office in the other building is not practical. So I do actually have a rural customers division. I'm sorry, you're too far from the CO to receive that service. I can offer you dial-up. That's what you're getting. Maybe we can put up a microwave tower for you someday, but you're getting dial-up. Be happy. So we've talked a little bit about plant, inside plant, wire centers. Let's go a little bit more into detail on that. Plant is just, stuff. So inside plant is anything inside the central office. So this is the switchgear, the main distribution frames, the channel banks, the switches themselves. This kind of also includes monitoring and supervisory equipment, administrative machines, anything that is inside the walls of the CO. Now, our CO here has excellent walls made out of folding conference tables, highly secure. And I want to make that distinction because some people over the show have asked, well, it's all inside. What do you mean inside plant and outside plant? We're in a building. Inside doesn't necessarily refer to it being in a building. It refers to it being on the premises of the central office. So it's something that's part of the CO's fixed infrastructure as opposed to being out in the service area.
Yeah, so for the outside plant cables, of course, this is everything then outside of the CO. So to get from the CO to the subscriber premises, you need cables. And, well, they're strung up on telephone poles here. You run them mostly on the ground at Southwest, with some exceptions.
Very few exceptions. We do try to maintain wheelchair accessibility wherever possible.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, here at this network, we're running 25 pair overhead and 4 pair drop lines on the ground. And of course, we have cross-connect wire in some of the IDFs. They're actually modular jacks, but they're cross-connected down at the bottom of the pole into the various, from the 25 pair cables into the various 4 pair cables. And so that brings us to cross connects, where these are the cross connects at the pole bases. This is what I'd call an IDF in our network. It's allowing us to say, I've got a 4 pair cable, there's 4 pairs in it. I've got a 25 pair cable with 25 pairs. How do those map to each other? So the little adapters that you can kind of see in these pictures go from the 25 pair cable, they break it out to 25 1 pair modular jack ports, and then the cables that come off of there recombine those into the 4 pair cables that can give us a metallic path from the CO to the subscriber. And at the subscriber end, of course, we have what is referred to as a network interface device, which is the demarcation point between what I own and what you own. So at this point, anything you plug into that output, that's your responsibility. We can lend you cables and stuff, but that's all on you, and everything before that point is on me. So this is a custom design for me that lets me do some things that are not really supported in anything off the shelf. So I've got a 4 pair cable that comes in. It can pass through on the through port to another subscriber down the line in case the first subscriber isn't using all 4 pairs. We can more efficiently use that cable. And then it has 4 output ports where we could break out up to 4 of those pairs to 4 separate ports for 4 separate telephones or other services, anything you want, DSL, T1, etc. While you cannot see it in this picture, under that cover, there's a whole array of jumpers that are specifically designed to allow arbitrary mappings of input pairs to output pairs, as well as fixing polarity and controlling whether the pairs appear at this NID at all or continue on to the next set on the through port. And this was kind of a finding out of 2 years ago when I spent pretty much all of Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday morning running around, mostly plugging cables in for people because they didn't know where to plug their phones in. So this is much better. You get a box at your table, you know it's yours, you know what the ports are, you know where to plug them in. I don't have to run around plugging cables in for people or telling them they plugged it into the wrong place.
And Joe, why does it have a cover on it? What are we
Yes.
protecting there?
The cover is on it because below there, all those pin jumpers, ring voltage is 90 volts AC. You don't want to touch that. HDSL span voltage to deliver a T1 is 200 volts. You don't want to touch that either. So it is in a cover to make it finger safe. In addition to, providing some robustness as well and giving us a place to put the label.
So let's talk about the service catalog. We told you about our billable services. Let's go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so local exchange telephone service, we are the local provider. You are ordering service from the local provider. This is your basic phone service as well as some of the more advanced phones. Like you could have a digital set line off the Meridian if you so chose. But most of the subscribers are analog. There's only been a few digital sets historically. Though these are all provided out of the my Meridian 1 option 11C PBX, which runs all of the analog lines at the show, as well as some special services that we'll be touching on later.
So DSL is the primary way that if you want high-speed data, we're bringing that out to you over the network. DSL basically couples a digital signal on top of your analog voice line. We use a amazingly named Paradigm Grand Slam to achieve this. This is a DSLAM, digital subscriber line access multiplexer. This is the thing that sits between the telephone switch and you, and inserts and uncouples the DSL circuit. This is also why you have to have a filter if you have DSL, because you don't want that signal hitting your phone, likewise vice versa. This is one of the more finicky parts of the show network, because it runs an ancient version of VxWorks. It has very strong opinions about the network topology you can plug it into. And a lot of this starts to get into where in real telephone companies and real ISPs, you have sophisticated external automated management. TR069 being the most widespread protocol for achieving this. We would prefer not run that. We run a more ChaosNet style DSL arrangement where, yeah, you found a speed stream in the free pile, plug it in. It'll probably work. So we don't want to have to bind your modems to our management plane and set all that up. This does mean the DSLAM takes some convincing. Yeah.
As I mentioned before, there's the hosted voicemail. So there's a Call Pilot 201i voicemail system in the Meridian PBX. This plugs in directly. It's a Windows Server 2003. Well, I think it's actually embedded or something, but it's 2003 on basically on a Meridian line card form factor. There's DSPs integrated, special custom bespoke Nortel stuff. And it's so, a little surprisingly modern. And of course, it integrates through all sorts of weird, not widely documented protocols to integrate with the Meridian. It basically presents as an ACDQ to the Meridian and pretends to push buttons by sending packets over an IP link. It's kind of funky.
I mean, my favorite thing is that it literally is a Windows server. We RDP into this to shut it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the keyboard and video port on the front there is the backup method.
Yeah, so we do offer a lot of other services that are packet data. We are your gateway to the greater information superhighway, which is a series of tubes. It is not a truck. We offer modem services going all the way down to the lower bell modes for your classic glass teletypes, including your acoustic couplers. Though in the show floor, good luck getting an acoustic coupler to work unless you've perhaps re-foamed the cups on it.
Mine's been working pretty well, but I have heard of some issues from the other people.
Right. So we do provide this as both you can dial in, you can hit our modem banks directly. You can also telnet into our terminal servers and go out from there. We provide PPP connectivity for the DSL subscribers, and that provides transport for that. And all of this is actually connected to our modern high-speed data backbone. So if you had a machine on the Wi-Fi and you wanted to connect to a machine on dial-up, that will work. I have seen in years past at VCF Southwest people who have brought conventional Unix System 5 machines, and they've hung modems off of them, and they're connecting into those from their modern laptop sitting on the Wi-Fi. So it's like, yes, take your laptop to lunch. You can still manage your exhibit from the courtyard. Having it be all one network is very convenient for us. The only thing we do firewall is we restrict broadcast traffic crossing. Getting a phone call in the middle of a presentation.
I thought I turned the ringer off. I guess it only gets turned down.
How uncouth.
I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'm sorry about that.
All right. Well, I think that's all I have to say on packet data. So.
Yeah. One last note that I don't remember if you touched on is our modem bank supports V90 speeds up to 56K. So we actually have the right digital modems to do that, connected via digital T1 line, and that's how that is allowed to work. Whereas you can't normally do that with just a couple phone line modems back to back. So of course, although it may not be as widely apparent, we have also a paging transmitter. So in the UHF band, there's a hospitality pager transmitter, which is a reasonably modern device. It just plugs into Ethernet. You send a HTTP GET request at it and tell it what pager to send and what message to do and baud rate and all that stuff. And this is actually fully licensed because the way these transmitters work, the company that manufactures the transmitter actually owns a slice of spectrum across the country. And they just put a thing in the back of the manual that says you are hereby authorized to use this transmitter on this frequency, and basically, sub-license you to do that. Yeah. We have an IVR set up. The number is 3800, and that asks you for a pager number and whether you want to send your number or a different number as the message, and we can send pages that way. And one note that's noted here on the slide, this is the only use of asterisk in the show. We get questions sometimes on, are you guys doing all this with asterisk? Mostly not. Try to stay away from it just as a matter of principle, because it's not an interesting way of doing things. It is a functional and quick way and free and easy and cheap, but it's just not as interesting.
It's also not purely TDM, and that is something we pride ourselves on, is that our entire production network is TDM, synchronously clocked, so you get a dedicated 64K per second channel that is yours. Nobody else is using that. Nothing's going to encroach on it. So if you've never experienced a real landline to landline call, as a lot of people who visit VCF haven't, it's an experience the first time you pick up the phone and there's no latency. It's immediate. People are also surprised by our Rick Astley hotline, which starts playing the song before you get the receiver to your ear because of how quickly the switch is able to see its off hook and start pushing data to it. So we also have mobile phone service, in addition to our wireline service. This is AMPS, the advanced mobile phone system. And believe me, it is so advanced. This is, if you look at the lineage of your modern cell phone, the back reference for this, we could call this G. No number, just G. It's a cell phone. This works by using static frequency allocations. It's basically a glorified two-way radio system with an automated control channel to tell your device what to do. It is hilariously insecure. If you want to find out just how insecure it is, feel free to come over to the CO and look at the police scanner sitting there.
Yeah. And to make this work, we also do a lot of number translations. Right. Random people who bring their cell phones to the show don't want to be bothered saying, okay, I need to program this for the Shadytel network, or I'm sorry, it's actually in Compitel. I don't want to program the numbers in here just to make phone calls. So you can dial out with the phone to anywhere on the show network with just any phone that's set up for roaming, which is pretty quick to do if it's not already turned on. To receive calls, we have to assign you a 4-digit DN, and we just translate it to the phone's 10-digit DN that it already has programmed in it to make that work.
And in case you're wondering, if you get your old GMC close enough to the building, yes, your OnStar will join our tower. It won't work correctly, but it will join our tower. Now, one of the things we talked about is billing. We are the phone company. Nothing is free. So we have a very, very custom billing system that actually I built out starting last year. It's a piece of software called Money Printer. We're now on Money Printer 2. Money Printer goes burr. This started out as a way to say, well, I want to take in the CDRs, the call detail recordings from a telephone switch, and apply some template transformations to this and get a bill. Money Printer has now become a full-blown CRM that knows every customer, what services they have, what switch it's being delivered off of, what path it gets to them on, to what port. We're working on adding outside plant management, so the complete combinatorics problem that is all the cross connects, as well as just anything else we need. And in case you're wondering, telephony is made of densely condensed inner left join.
As well as many-to-many.
Yes, everything you see with telephones is a many-to-many. You can put the same number on multiple phones. You can put different numbers on multiple phones. You can put numbers on phones that ring in a certain order. You can have different lines that are bridged together. It's all many-to-manys. There is no attempt to optimize this database. There is an attempt to try and make it somewhat maintainable long-term. So it is a unique solution to VCF. There are commercially available and open source telephony billing systems. The reason we have a custom one is because VCF is an almost unique footprint for billing. Our billing cycle starts on Thursday night when we energize the CO, and it ends on Sunday when we hit print on the bills. And so that's not really something that most software can do. They really want you to put in like a 30-day cycle on there. We also want the ability to arbitrarily add charges for anything, including calling 411 too many times. So there's a lot of features that were built into this software because we said, it'd be really nice if. And then there was a branch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the broad overview of everything we do here. We'd love to take any questions you have. Of course, a reminder for requests from the show to please ask them at the microphone provided so that they make it into the recording.
How many times is too many times to call 411?
I'm sorry, that's proprietary information. I can tell you that rickrolling the operator does immediately result in a service charge, though.
First, just want to say our DSL service has been super reliable, so thank you very much for that. Second, I'm curious about the AMP stuff. So on the POCSAG slide, you said fully licensed because blah, 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 and I noticed there wasn't such a bullet point on the AMPs
Yeah,
slide.
when you receive your bill for Incompetell AMP service, you will see a license consideration fee. We did consider it. This starts to get into the complexities of how do you do interesting things with radio? Mm-hmm. And when are you crossing the line where you absolutely need to license something? We are pushing so little power that by the time you get out of this building, you're off the network.
Yeah.
We do a site survey. We find the open slice because, of course, the FCC does provide a licensing lookup service where you can find who is the Class A holder for that spectrum, what are they doing with it. And because of the way that the AMPS bands have moved through the years, we know who is using that in Chicago. It's a single company. And so we're able to find out what are they using, what are they not using, and at extremely low power, we can sit in one of the unused slots. If we were to ever expand this, like that last sliding section of wall in the exhibit hall, if VCF Midwest becomes a 100,000 square foot show, that's the point where we're going to be pushing enough power that you get what's called a special temporary authority from the FCC, which is basically, yeah, we're going to bend the rules a little bit, and we'd like you to okay this. Ultimately, the way an STA works is it's not really a formal process. You go to the Class A license holder and say, we'd like to do something that might affect you. Are you willing to allow this to go through? And with very rare exceptions, the Class A license holder agrees, because unless you're pushing a huge amount of power, you're not going to affect them. Now, at VCF Southwest, my Class A license holder, who's the neighbor, is DFW International Airport, and they have some very strong opinions about what kind of radios I power on there. So we run a much, much more constrained RF footprint there than we do here. If you're curious, what is the Class A license holder for AMPS now? It's still cell service. But with spread spectrum frequency hopping, static allocations are not really a thing anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, cells have, if you think about it on a map as like a hexagon grid, think Settlers of Catan, you know, there is a pattern that's used to assign the channels and make sure they don't overlap. But error correction has gotten so good now, and collision detection has gotten so good now, that it doesn't really matter. Think about the fact that a cell phone company will sell you a femtocell to put in your house, and I guarantee you they're not reconfiguring their towers when they ship you that device.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Good question.
Hi, I come here from seeing the DIY cell tower in the parking lot. So when you're running that tower, AT&T and T-Mobile, when you bond those at the CO, what's the total bandwidth that you're working with?
Okay, so this gets into really complicated ISP and traffic management things that we are not going to go deep into here. I will tell you the short answer is it's not really a total bandwidth question. Those are in an equal cost multipath routing group. So your origin address is hashed and you wind up on one of those connections. So it's not that you have the bandwidth of all three, it's you have the bandwidth of whichever one you got hashed onto. We have all three so that we have more aggregate bandwidth because we do actually rate limit exhibitors. You know, you're not getting the full pipe because our goal is not to give you fast internet, it's to give as many people as possible internet. If you want to go deep into this, I invite you to come to the CO or to read the Wikipedia page on ECMP. It's much more detailed than I can get into. But the gist is that you're getting whatever capacity is on the provider you're hashed onto.
Thank you.
With the recent retirements of 2G, GSM, is that something you would consider looking into?
So I would invite you to come to the CO and talk to Evan as well. Exhausted 110 is the person who does a lot of the amp stuff and a lot of the radio stuff. There is a weird hole when you look at what is possible to run on your own. Amps you can do on an SDR. That's how we're running it. 2G is shockingly hard because the hardware for that never came down to a price point that it hit the gray market. LTE and 4G, on the other hand, well, you can buy a box on eBay that'll do that. And in fact, you can get that fully licensed with a single API call to Google Cloud, of all places. Because elastic spectrum is a thing. Welcome to 2025. Doing 5G is something we've looked at, but it's not interesting because it's modern. And 5G really starts to get into VoLTE technologies, and if you have not looked into VoLTE, save yourself the madness. It is a rabbit hole with no bottom. It involves full-blown IPsec with mobile IP, and it's just far too complicated to run for a show for 3 days.
What about 3G, since most of that is also being discontinued?
That's kind of in the mid place, where it's possible to get equipment that does 3G. It's not terribly difficult, but that equipment was designed for hospitality, theme parks, cruise ships, hospitals. So you're needing to run a fairly substantial number of those micro cell systems to get coverage. And figuring out how to do that in a way that's sustainable and doesn't burn us out is really kind of where the industry is right now of hobbyists doing this. I say give it another maybe 2-3 years, and then I would expect that tooling to be there.
So this is a two-parter. Where do you source most of your equipment, and what's the one thing that you really want but can't seem to find?
So I think we need to give a huge shout out to Ascendtech on eBay, who has been able to either source or find for us just about anything we want. They are our source for most line cards, for most equipment. I've even had luck with emailing them and saying, hey, I want this widget. Do you know where you can get it? And a month later, they come back and they say, yeah, we pulled it out of some sawmill in the Northwest, and we'll sell it to you for $40 shipped. So a lot of it's eBay. Joe, you've had some interesting acquisitions for the Meridian equipment.
Yeah, well, my Meridian that runs the show is actually locally sourced. I found it on Craigslist, and the guy I got it from said he got it from the Empress Casino in Joliet, Illinois, which is about like 45 to 50 minutes southwest of here, roughly, down I-55. So I picked that up several years back, maybe 2020 or 2021, and it's been used for the show since, well, probably later that year, I think. Whatever year I got it, it all blends together a little bit. As far as storing the equipment, I mean, a lot of this is just in my house for the stuff that I own anyway. And I do have a storage unit for some of the things that like don't need I don't need to get to until this show, like storing, 1,500 pounds of concrete bricks and some 170 linear feet of telephone pole rail. That stuff can stay in storage. The VCFMW organizers store a lot of the stuff that solely belongs to VCF, like the 25 pair cable. Some of that is mine, some of that is the show's. The 4 pair cable is all mine. That goes in some big cardboard boxes and gets palletized in my storage unit. So as far as storage goes, yeah, as far as one thing that I don't have that I would like to have and can't find, nothing like immediately comes to mind at the moment. That doesn't mean there isn't something. Well, unless I can say that I can't find the time to do everything that I want to do, because there are like several things that didn't make the cut for this year that I really wanted to have. And actually, if you go on my website and look at some of the network diagram information that I have, that's dms-100.net. Somewhere buried in the computer's VCFMW hierarchy is some network diagrams for this year. You may notice that I wanted to have payphones working. I wanted to have PSTN access using voice over IP, which we kind of have, but it goes out my phone line at home, so I'm kind of tightly controlling access to that. I wanted to have, there's something else on there. I wanted to have, I'm sure there was something else that didn't quite make the cut, but a number of these things, I mean, the telephone poles are custom built, Shady radio interfaces are custom built, the stand the Meridian is on is custom built. The MDF, 110 block main distribution frame that's in the rack, if you haven't seen, a giant rat's nest of cross-connect wires, that is not meant to mount in a rack. That's custom mounting hardware to mount it in the rack. That was made last year. So all this stuff, luckily I kind of had most of the heavy mechanical engineering components already made for this year. It was just a matter of setting them back up, some minor modifications, pop some holes in them to mount some APs, that kind of thing. And, but yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah. I'd say probably the one thing I'm still looking for is that there existed historically equipment to put ISDN PRIs, or really just T1, looking at the layer 2 transport, to put that on fiber. And having run a 980-foot T1 built out of Ethernet cables, yeah, fiber would have been nicer. But the problem is a lot of that starts to get into like SONET muxes and, where it's like, all right, let's bring up the fiber ring. And that's a little more than I want to store, because all of my stuff does go into my garage.
Yeah,
the car does not.
Actually, come to think of it, SONET muxes that have T1 cards that are actually available is the thing I'd like to have. I have some SONET muxes, but they were used by Metra for like trackside cameras or something, and so all I have are video in and out cards for them, which I'm not really particularly interested in, but they do work.
Very cool. Thank you, guys.
Well, you started to answer this in your last answer, but given that you said you only use asterisk for that one IVR, I was wondering, how does that PSTN connection work?
Okay. So I will make one caveat. There is asterisk also at home strictly for CNET access, but not the PSTN. So for my POTS line, we have Cisco ISRs, and it has an FXO card at home, and there is a T1 card here, and there's a feature of the Cisco ISR where you can take the FXO card and configure it to turn it into a continuously running, is it RTP?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's RTSP.
RTSP stream over a VPN mesh, basically, back to here. And that will then be spit out on a channel of a T1 that's plugged into the Meridian, and that T1 exists for the entire sole purpose of getting my POTS line to appear on the Meridian. And then I can route calls over it.
So that's a POTS line from the real telephone company?
It is.
Yes.
It is served off a
Yes.
DMS 100 in my local wire center.
Yeah, very
Just to
cool.
clarify, this is served off of
Yeah,
not
AT&T's
your DMS.
DMS
Yeah.
100,
Yeah.
not my DMS 100. My DMS 100 just lives in the garage and is off most of the time. I gave that presentation 2 years ago.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, guys.
Hey, so you built this super awesome network. What is either, I guess, like the coolest, most unusual, or maybe most annoying thing somebody has done with this network?
The prank calls can get annoying.
And that's not very cool either. So
What's that?
I said prank calls aren't that cool either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have said clever.
It's fun for a little bit, but like past a certain point, it can get a little annoying. But then as far as, and this is just me personally, of course, but as far as the coolest thing, I really like Evan, or Exhausted 110 as his handle is, it brings the step switch demo.
Yeah.
And it draws a crowd every year. Everybody is so enamored with it. It's electromechanically moving telephone switching. It's, great to look at and great to explain to people, like, this is what's going on, 100 years ago when you were dialing a dial telephone. Every digit you dialed corresponds to a movement in the switch that causes your call to be connected to the next stage. So it's a really cool demo. I'm really glad he brings it. He's been bringing it, I think, 3 years now in a row. And it's always a great hit among people. We even get a lot of people who say, oh, I used to work for the phone company. This was before my time, but, or you get people who say, my father used to work for the phone company, or my uncle, or whatever, and worked on this equipment or whatever. And so it's a pretty cool demo.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing I see at the show, the step switch definitely wins hands down for me for single coolest thing. But I think the coolest thing I see over the network is when people dial through the CO. Like, they're not dialing to us. They're not hitting our hosted services. It's one exhibitor connecting to another, because that's a really cool community aspect of, hey, I have a terminal, you have a terminal server. Let me connect.
Another one that on a similar line is when we use the network for practical things.
Yes.
Like I'd be getting calls. We have the 611 set up, and this isn't really what it's for, but fair enough. It's labeled repair on the directory. So 611 is traditionally telephone company repair. It's if your service isn't working. But as some of you may know, we had a few instances where power tripped this year. People were calling 611 to report power outages. And I was like, in the VCFMW chat, saying like, hey, they just reported an outage over in T again, and a few times we're like out troubleshooting something, and I find a phone at an exhibitor's table and call 611 and say, hey, Maldridge, can you check, this thing, or one of my other co-exhibitors, hey, can you check this thing for me, or can you put Maldridge or Termage on or whatever, and
Yeah, this is a field tech. We need something moved in the CO.
Yeah, I'm troubleshooting a problem out here. Can you check this for me?
Looks like customer-induced damage. Roll a truck.
That was, and even the amps phones, I'm out working on something somewhere, and I just pick up the brick and bring it with me, and then I have a phone. I can call to test things, or call and get in touch with somebody back at the office, and every once in a while it's like, man, it was actually useful for something real. It's some calls between central command and us, like reporting a problem with the network, or calling down there to see if they have our badges, or like whatever it's always fun when you have an opportunity to do that. It's like, man, it was useful.
Cool, thank you.
A bit of a follow-up to the step-by-step. Have you ever considered adding additional switches in addition to the Meridian one, or do you want to just stay with the Meridian one for simplicity?
So I want to jump in. We actually do run many switches. There are, I think, 4 digital switches plus the analog.
So we have the Meridian, we have a Cisco 3845, Cisco 2851.
Yeah.
Your 2811.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then that's just at our table.
Right.
Am I missing any? I
No,
think that's everything in our network, but across the show, there are two,
At
is it three?
least two others. I think there's three this
two
year.
exhibitors who brought their own PBXs. Generic Cable brought a BCM 50. There was N9 Tax brought another Cisco ISR. And then Mobatch brought an AS 5300, which is really or 5200, I think, which is really a modem bank, and so that you can dial into some of their machines from elsewhere in the show. And those, I think, are the three T1s that are actually doing voice lines. And then Hulu brought a channel bank, so he's going to get billed for 24 phone lines because I just provisioned the whole T1. So, we don't have our own equipment that, like, the Cisco ISRs don't appear to be as public facing because they don't really distribute too many lines to customers, but the 2851 is serving customer T1s, and 3845 is kind of our local tandem switch between all our equipment to kind of concentrate back up into the top of the network and then drop back out into wherever it's going.
There are other switches we've considered bringing. The future is always exciting. So you'll have to come next year.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll say in the past, I have successfully paired my ComDial PBX with your equipment.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was not able to get the customer service module in the voicemail working in order to generate spam calls, but perhaps in another show.
Hey, hang on a minute. Customer service module and spam. What kind of customer service are you providing?
Only the best. I'd also make an observation on congratulations on successfully having your presentation interrupted by an AMPS call.
Oh, hang on.
Speaking of that, I'm getting a page right now.
Yeah.
I guess I better call the knock.
Hang on. I'm getting paged now. The network may be down. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. If you have questions, feel free to email us.
Yeah, I'm getting a page.
Yeah, can I borrow your phone?